Hello, hello everybody. So today's Friday. It is just now 5 o'clock, so hopefully everybody is starting the weekend. Today I'm not going to do any music. I'm not going to sing or play anything. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about my story because it is a huge part of who I am, and it's a huge part of my music as well. So, I don't really know where to start. I'm going to try to keep this under 15 minutes. But it's something I could talk about for hours and hours and hours. So, when it was actually my senior year in college, which I got to my senior year in only 3 years instead of the usual 4 because I came in with enough credits to skip a year. So I was about to graduate. I was in my very last semester. We had just come back from Christmas break. I think it was the first week that we were back from Christmas break, and I was sitting in class on Friday, and I got this horrible headache just out of nowhere. And now headaches don't usually bother me too much. I've had really bad allergies for my whole life, so headaches are just kind of a usual thing for me. When that happens, I just take some Tylenol and go on with my life. So my roommate and I actually were in the same major in the same year, so she and I had all of our classes together. I was in, this was a class before my major classes started, and so I sent her a text and I said, hey, I've got a really bad headache, would you please bring my Tylenol? She said, sure, so she brought it to class, and I took some right before my next class started, and was like, okay, we're going to be fine, we're just going to, keep going, it'll go away. Well, it didn't, and long story short, it lasted for about 6 days, and this headache just got worse and worse and worse. I kept thinking if I went to sleep and woke up the next day it'd be gone, but it didn't. It never did. It just got progressively worse, and at the beginning I was just like, oh, my head hurts, I don't feel good, okay, I'm going to go home and lay down and watch a movie and just be still and quiet. That didn't work. So, after a couple days, I finally decided to go to the doctor. This was in my college town, not my hometown, so I didn't really have a doctor there. So I just went to a walk-in clinic, and they said, oh, we think you have a sinus infection. I was like, okay, I thought it was a migraine, but if you think it's a sinus infection, cool, you're the doctor, just, send me on my way. So we did that, and then the next day I felt a little bit better. After they had given me a shot at the doctor's office, after that I felt a little better the next day, and then the day after that it was much, much worse. And it had gotten to the point throughout the days where first I decided, okay, my head hurts bad enough, I'm having trouble paying attention, so I probably shouldn't drive. So I stopped driving. I just rode to my classes with my roommate, and if I had to go anywhere else, I called my brother, and my sister-in-law were in the same town. They went to the same school that I did. They had just graduated, so if I needed anything, I just asked them or my roommate to, help me out, because they knew I wasn't feeling well. And it got bad enough that I was a little concerned. I asked my mom. My grandmother on my mom's side actually died of brain cancer, so I said, is there any chance that this could be something like that? And she said, it's a totally different kind of headache. I think that you would know. So I don't think that's it. And I said, okay, that's fine. I'm going to put it out of my mind. It's all good. So I went to the doctor the first time, felt a little better the next day. Day after that it was awful. I had really bad, my balance was off, and I couldn't really walk in a straight line. I couldn't drive, like I said. I was kind of seeing weird stuff, how you see waves sometimes when heat is rising off of a pavement? It was kind of like that, but everywhere that I looked. So everything was just kind of hazy and kind of wavy, and I couldn't really eat anything. I was constantly nauseated, so I was living off of Gatorade and saltines. And so after I went to the doctor the second time, they again said they thought it was a sinus infection. And I remember they wrote me something for a prescription, and I was sitting there waiting to get it filled, and my brother was in the car outside waiting. And I remember sitting there and just saying, don't pass out, don't pass out. So I had this like cold sweat, and I'm sure people just looked at me and were like, something is seriously wrong with that girl. I don't know what's going on. So I was like, oh, I just have to hold it together long enough to get home. So did that, got back in the car, my brother drove me home, and he said, are you okay, or do I need to come inside with you? And I said, I think I'm okay. You know, my roommate's inside, and she's been taking really great care of me, so I'm all right, thank you. So I went inside and went back to the back, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I'm about to be sick. So I ran to the bathroom and threw up, and then I just kind of laid there on the tile. You know, when you're sick to your stomach like that, when your head hurts that bad, I mean, it was the pain that was causing that, so I was like, okay, I'm just going to lay here on this cold tile and it'll be fine. And eventually my roommate came in, and she, I have a dog, and her name's Cassie, and Cassie was really worried about me because she knew something was wrong, so she was kind of in my face, and when you're sick, your dog in your face is the last thing that you want. So she came and took Cassie out, and then blew up an air mattress and put it in the floor of the bathroom so I could stay there and be comfortable. She got me some water. She was like, is there anything I can do? I was like, no, it's okay. And I had called my mom and said, I know it's late, and it was a 3.5-hour drive from home to where I was at for college. And I was like, I know it's late, but I really need you here. And she said, okay, well, as soon as it gets light, like, your father's not going to let me drive right now because it's dark. And I don't know, I'm from Arkansas, so if you're not from Arkansas, you may not know this, but at night you can't hardly drive because there are deer everywhere, and they just randomly will pop out of the forest and run in front of you, and at night it's hard to see them. They always do it like when it's dark, and so anyway, it was dangerous for her to drive. So she said, as soon as it gets decently light, I'm headed your way. I said, okay. So that night, while I was laying on the tile, my arm kept going numb. I couldn't figure out why. I thought it was because I was laying on the cold tile. You know, your arm goes to sleep. And it would, you know, go to sleep, and then it'd come back. And then it'd go to sleep again, and then it'd come back. So it's like, well, my mom's coming in the morning. It's okay. Whatever. I'm just going to stay until then. So my mom finally got there at like 10 o'clock the next morning. How are you doing? Oh, well, you know, I'm okay. By the way, my left arm keeps going numb. But it's not for very long, so I'm not worried about it. And she said, okay, so by not very long, you mean like 30 seconds? And I was like, oh, no, I meant more like 30 minutes. And at that point, she was like, okay, we're going to the hospital right now. So loaded up, went to the hospital, to the emergency room, and this was during flu season, so the emergency room was pretty full, and but we got pretty much straight in, which was crazy. So got in, went to the nurse that, you know, sees you before you get back and get a room, and she said, wow, honey, they told me that you looked bad, but I didn't know you looked that bad. And I was like, okay, I'm in a lot of pain here, like, cut me a break, alright? And by this point, I mean, my arm is still, like, going numb and coming back. Now, on this side of it, looking back, I'm like, those are some major stroke-like symptoms, but I was 20, so I wasn't thinking about stroke. Like, I was a Zumba instructor, I'm in pretty good health, so I don't, you know, I was like, this is, I don't know, it just hadn't even crossed my mind. But I think when they heard, oh, her head's hurting, she's having visual problems, and she can't balance, and her arm is going numb, they're like, oh my gosh, this girl is having a stroke, let's get her in. So they put me back in a room and gave me some morphine, and that was the first time in six or 7 days that I had had any relief at all from that headache. And at this point, if I stood up, my arm would go numb. Now, when I was laying down and being still, it was okay, but if I was up and walking, it was gone, like dead, lifeless. So they did a CT scan. I don't remember that part at all, honestly, but they came in and said, hey, we have some bad news. We did find something on your CT scan. I was like, thank you, Lord. And they're like, honey, you understand this is bad news, right? And I was like, I know, but you're the first person that has not said, oh, it's just a sinus infection. I was like, I knew something was wrong, but I just didn't know what. So what they found were several blood clots in my brain, the biggest of which ran, it was about as big around as a finger, and it ran through my superior sagittal sinus, down the right transverse sinus, and down into my jugular vein. So that goes basically the whole length of my head and down into my neck. This is how long this thing was. It was several inches long. And they're like, so this is what's causing the problems. Okay, great. At least now we know what it is. Well, at the hospital in the town that I was in, they didn't have any specialists that could operate on me. So they said, we need to get you to, I think there were only 4 places in the entire country that could operate on me. And one of them just happened to be in Little Rock, Arkansas, which was about 2.5 hours from where I was at school and an hour from my home. And so we're like, okay, how do I get there? I can't fly. They were going to fly me in a helicopter, but you can't do that because the pressure was already so intense in my head that going up in the helicopter would have made it worse. But they didn't want to send me by ambulance either because you hit one wrong bump and a chunk of that clot could break off and I could be dead, you know? So they decided that the only option they actually had was in the ambulance, and you just hope for the best. So they put me in the ambulance, and my mom drove behind. My brother and sister-in-law kind of stayed to help clean up at my house in my college town. And if you've ever seen Soul Surfer, that scene where her mom is driving behind the ambulance just praying, like, don't take her, please don't take her. That's what my mom was doing the whole time, following me from Fayetteville to Little Rock. And my dad said he would meet me there at the hospital at UAMS. So I finally got to UAMS. That was the longest, most awful ride of my life. An ambulance, I always thought they would be really cool. They're basically just a giant truck. It's just a truck. So, kind of bumpy, which is not what you want when your head is literally killing you. So I got there, and they said, okay, we have a room for you. We're going to go put you up on this floor, and we're going to operate you on Friday. I think it was Wednesday at this point. So we're going to operate you on Friday. I said, okay, fine. Well, they woke me up in the middle of the night, like 2 or 3 a.m., to do an MRI. And if you've ever had an MRI, it is very, very loud. And if it tells you anything, I slept through the whole thing, which that should tell you how sick I was. Because it was, thankfully, not any longer. But if you can sleep through that, then something is definitely wrong. So I slept through the whole thing, and we went back upstairs, and then they were giving me a PICC line, which is something that they can, like, give medicine to you. Or I think mine had a double or something so that you could draw blood out of one and do medicine in through the other. I'm not sure about that. I could be wrong. But it's called a PICC line, okay? I'm not a medical person. I don't really know. So they did that, and my parents had gone to lunch. So this was all happening on Thursday. And they said, okay, so we've taken a look at your scans, and we're going to operate on you right now. And so my dad ran to go get my mom, and my brother and everybody else, and they said, oh my gosh, they're taking her now, they're taking her early, so we need to go upstairs and, be with her. So they came to hang out with me, and now my sister-in-law's grandfather had just recently passed away from some freak accident after a surgery. He had a blood clot form and break off, and it killed him. It was like a minor surgery too, so we thought he was fine, and then he just died. So that was kind of on my mind, and I talked to my parents. I said, look, I've had a good life, and God has a plan for me, and whatever happens now happens. You guys know that I love you, and I know that you love me, and if things don't go well in here, then know that I'll be in a good place, and I'm okay, and I love you guys, and you just have to go on with your lives. But hopefully everything will be fine, and I'll see you on the other side. So anyway, I'm about to run out of my 15 minutes, so I'm going to stop this one here and start another one to tell you about the actual surgery and what happened after. So please, please keep watching, because what happened after is the main part of my story. So I love you guys, and I'll start another one right now.